Good afternoon, Mr. Samant, Mr. Damsky, members of the GEM Corporation. Thank you for having us here this afternoon. Your company, Sula Vineyards, has done an outstanding job. Mr. Samant, you've noticed real opportunity in the market, and you've done a great job. The question is, what should you do to go from here to become India's premier winemaker? We are JMSB Consulting. We have a great group of consultants, starting with Sébastien Garnier over there, Audrey Davis, Peter Vergopoulos, and myself, Jonathan Kutcher. The agenda for today, Audrey will be doing a qualitative analysis of the industry you operate, followed by a quantitative analysis by Sébastien. I'll be looking at some alternatives your company could follow, followed by a detailed implementation plan by Peter. Audrey?
Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's begin with a quick overview of the situation. The market is exploding in India for wine in general. You are a vivacious entrepreneur. You're somebody who has really taken a hold of this opportunity and have moved forward with it and built up this company. Right now, you're facing a few financial challenges in terms of raising financing to support growth that your company needs to compete in this exciting market. Some of the key issues that we're going to be addressing today. The competition. Obviously, there are several new entrants into this market from outside of the country and also within the country. It is an attractive opportunity. The growth of demand as a result, the reason for the competition, and the growth of the company overall. After that, the capacity needs, the ability that your company is going to have to grow. And then the deal structure of this new financing, that's going to be key in our recommendation. Our objective for you today is to determine the most advantageous path for the firm's future growth in the exciting development of the Indian wine industry over the next decade. This most advantageous path, we're basing that on how much financial sense it makes, particularly in terms of cash flow, one of the major issues today, in terms of market share, in terms of maintaining this market share that you're looking for. After that, the fit with your entrepreneurial style and the business risk overall. Our recommendation, expand aggressively. And we recommend you to do that so that you can become India's premier winemaker. Let's take a quick look at the market and we'll reinforce our position on this. So the rapid expansion of the market and the acceptance of domestic wine. India is increasingly becoming a more attractive place to purchase your wine from, both within the country and externally as well. There have been interesting government changes in terms of the exception that you have from the excise tax and the slashing of sales tax. One thing to be concerned about, as I mentioned briefly before, is the entry of major beverage companies and the fact that they are so well funded, so they are a much bigger force than you are. With India's wine market growing at about 25%, your company needs to grow at least that rate in order to maintain the market share. And that's what our recommendation is going to show you how to do. The company right now is very well positioned. Everybody who is involved is very knowledgeable, particularly the leaders. You have established operations, and your brand awareness is growing as a result of your involvement and in the industry as a whole, in terms of growing the industry itself and in terms of promoting your own brand. However, the company is leveraged and there are capacity limitations. But the company has increased its production since its beginning on an average of about 2.6 times per year. So that is something that is very exciting as well. If we take a quick look at the market position, you can see on the sort of rough drawing of the map of India there that where you're located in that middle circle is very well positioned in order to reach some of the other cities. You have a central location to these market driving centers. You have an excellent network and your marketing abilities are very, very strong, and the demand growth is necessitating the change. Let's take a quick look at yourself. You are a true entrepreneur. We have some of your qualities up there. Very ambitious and creative and able to take advantage of opportunities. You have business experience, especially in terms of financing. You have a great network, you have a drive and passion for this industry, and you have a great personality that's allowing people to latch on and hitch themselves to your ideas. You can certainly spearhead the growth that we're recommending for you. So to review, you are an excellent leader, and we trust completely in your ability to take this company through the steps that we are going to present to you. We believe that the market is attractive enough and is growing at a rate that necessitates your participation in this industry, and as well, the business is well positioned to grow in terms of its place in the country, in terms of the market knowledge of your products. Your company needs to stay ahead of the curve to maintain its position as a market leader, and you are the person to lead it there. I will now pass it on to Sébastien, who is going to go over some of the financials for you.
Thank you, Audrey. You gave us 3 different scenarios to expand your company, to grow your company. So we're going to look at each of the scenarios and determine which one is the more suitable for your company. But first, I'd like you to pay a particular attention to the assumptions we made. Here are the assumptions underlying the analysis I'm going to present you in a moment. First, white and red wine sell at the same price. Based on the characteristic of the regions where you're producing, we assume that there was a 50-50 split between red and white wine. All wines in the same category are produced equally. For example, if you take white wine, you're going to sell as many Sauvignon Blanc as Chenin Blanc. What are the 3 scenarios we looked at, A, B, C? Well, the most aggressive one, C, will allow you to generate over the 5 coming years more than 175% growth. We'll be very glad to provide you with the details of our calculation after our presentation, if you request them. In terms of the cost, we also see that option number C, scenario number C, is the cost structure the most interesting to you in terms of the percentage of revenue. So just to summarize, option C is the more interesting for you in terms of growing your revenue, and it's the most interesting for you in terms of the cost structure. So overall, scenario C contributes the most to your bottom line. If we focus more now on scenario C, what do we see? First, your profitability. Starting in year 2008, you're going to be profitable by expanding with the scenario number C. And as well, you will generate positive cash flow from operation starting in 2008. And this scenario will allow your company to grow through internal funding. I'd like to mention as well, one of the reasons why scenario C is so interesting compared to scenario A and scenario B is the fact that your industry is a very capital-intensive industry. And scenario C offers the less percentage of your revenue tied into your fixed asset. What does this mean to you? When the demand is going to fluctuate, well, your company, by implementing scenario C, will be less affected than if your company was implementing scenario A or scenario B. I'd like to pass it on to my colleague Jonathan, who's going to tell you why scenario C is the best option for your company.
Thank you, Sébastien. Starting off on a higher level, let's look, first of all, should you slow down, meaning stop expanding, or as you called it, ride the wave, which would mean to expand. If we took it down to another level, it would mean if you were to expand, would there be slow growth? Would there be medium growth, or would there be aggressive growth? And I'm going to tell you right now exactly why you should ride the wave and go for aggressive growth. Let's start with the reason not to slow down. Okay? To slow down. Yeah, why you shouldn't. Well, first of all, slowing down will not allow you to capitalize on India's burgeoning market, middle class. Now, that burgeoning middle class are the people that are buying these wines in Delhi and Bombay. Secondly, your competitors will be able to enter easier. If you have not established your market position, they can come in and take it from you because of the vast resources that Audrey had mentioned before. You won't be able to achieve economies of scale. By increasing your growth rapidly, you'll be able to buy more land, buy more grapes at better prices, which adds to your bottom line. And lastly, it's not part of your vision, Mr. Samant. You really wanted to grow this company to become India's premier winemaker, not a very small player in the whole entire industry. So basically, slowing down could cause Sula Vineyards to eventually be squeezed out of the market by the people that could come into it. Now, looking at your expansion alternatives, we looked at these 4 decision criteria that Audrey had mentioned earlier. The first 2, market share and financials, your cash flows, because right now you had mentioned that there's a problem with the cash flows. So those 2 criteria were very important to us to make our decision. And following with the fit with your vision as well as the business risk. So measuring the first 2 decision criteria, an X pretty much means no points and a tick means 1 point. You can clearly see that as you move along, Peter will show you how your cash flows actually improve by aggressively expanding, as well as your market share. If you don't really grow, it's not going to increase. And that's the most important part, is to increase your market share and your presence in India. Looking at the last 2, the fit, it's clear to see that the fit with the entrepreneur, the more aggressive you go, the more it fits with you, Mr. Samant. And lastly, the only thing about this is that there is inherent risk with this capital asset purchases, and Peter will show you how to mitigate that risk. So overall, you could see that the totals, it's clear that aggressive growth is the key because the opportunity is there now. Our recommendation is to you. Expand aggressively because it allows you to maintain or increase your market share. It allows you to better fit with your vision. It allows you to improve your cash flows, and it also leverages your established Indian brand right now before your competitors come in. And you can do this so Sula Vineyards can become India's premier winemaker. I'd like to pass it now on to Peter, who will show you our implementation plan.
Thank you, Jonathan. So scenario C is the scenario which best solves the issue of cash flow and also solves the issue of expansion and market share. The obvious questions are how we're going to do this. The goals of our implementation plan are as follows: to expand capacity, which is currently at 73.7%, and we project, based on the growth that you are expecting, that you will max out this capacity between 2008 and 2009 using scenario C. So we're going to take care of that for you, and also that'll also involve a deal structure for new financing. Key also is that since you are expanding, this expansion will have to be managed, and therefore we'll have to look at some operational and logistics issues, and as well looking on how you're going to be expanding your management base. In the third major goal that we'd like to do is not to neglect your domestic market. We'd like you to continue focusing on that and growing that. These 3 will allow Sula to stay ahead of the growth and maintain market share. This is how the implementation looks at a glance. In the short term, which is now in 6 months, we're going to pursue financing for the expansion that is going to be needed in order to implement this plan. In the medium term, from 6 months to 2 years, it is critical to oversee this expansion very carefully. A strong focus on operations, logistics, and management, and again, a focus on growing the local market. In the long term, which is 2 years and further, we're going to advocate that you continue to focus on your domestic market, consider the export market, and then at that point, depending on the forecast for wine growth and the need for further expansion, we could then possibly consider a public offering. We'll talk about that as well. Next slide, please. Let's look at capacity, because this is the most important issue in how and how fast you're going to expand and what needs to be done. As we mentioned earlier, you are now producing 2.1 million bottles, and your full capacity is 2.85 million bottles, so you're at 73.7%. With scenario C, you will reach the maximum of your capacity sometime between 2008 and 2009. So any expansion must be completed before then. Based on 2012 revenue expectations, which Sebastian showed you to be at $17.38 million, and the regular price increases that come with scenario C, our capacity calculation works out to be 6.3 million bottles by 2012. That is about 2.25 more of the capacity you have now. So let's see how we could expand, and we've created an expansion schedule for you. It involves a two-step expansion process in order to keep up the pace with the growing market and the growing growth that you're going to be experiencing. The top line is your capacity needs based on market growth. It goes from 2008 to 2012, and you see these are the millions of bottles that you're going to require in order to keep up your market share and to meet the demand. The second line is the capacity plan. You're starting now at 2.85, but you will need approximately 4.5 to be completed by the end of 2009 in order to keep up pace. Once again, another expansion is going to be required in 2011 to make you be able to produce 6.5 million bottles at that point. The third line is, in each case, how much additional capacity is needed. 1.65 million in 2009 and 2 million in 2011. The estimated investment for this expansion is 5 million in 2009 and 7 million in 2011, and we have based that on approximations and some calculations based on the expansion that you did of 1 million liters, for which you got financing from the representatives of GEM. We'll be happy to show you details if you'd like to see them. The question is now, what is the deal structure to make this happen? In 2009, Sebastian's display of scenario C and the choice of scenario C becomes very critical. Scenario C is the one which affords you the growth, that affords you the lower costs, and in particularly because of the emphasis on white wine, which matures faster and therefore contributes more quickly to your cash flows, and was an important consideration in the calculation of our revenue. This is the one which will allow you to finance this expansion internally, especially the $5 million investment, especially the $7 million investment. The $5 million investment, the cash may not be there immediately, but the key message I'd like you to take away is that it can be financed through internal cash flow, because you'll be estimated to receive $2.92 million in 2008 and another $3.78 million in 2009. That covers the $5 million investment required, provided, of course, that you earmark that cash towards this expansion. We recommend you do, because at this point it is quite critical to be able to keep up with the market share. If construction needs to begin sooner in order to be able to be ready for 2009, and the cash simply is not there, some short-term credit will be needed to bridge this capital that will be needed, this cash, but it will only be for a very short amount of time. In 2011, in order to keep up with the capacity that we're recommending for you, you'll need a $7 million investment. By that point, cumulatively, and this is not counting the cash that was used for the first investment, we have calculated that you will have $19 million in cash, which can be used for this expansion. So now that this is possible and expansion can be done, the short term involves tending to this first stage of expansion. As we recall, the new capacity is needed by mid-2008 to 2009. The focus here is on timelines and construction contingencies. It is important for you to make sure that this capacity is available for you so that you don't erode your market share. Also, because this represents a significant expansion for your company, it is time to consider management-based growth. Who are other people who can take some of the responsibility and do some of the management tasks so that higher levels of management can focus on more strategic issues? we recommend that you identify those who are ready to step up from within your company. This is critical because Mr. Samant will have a lot to do during this time. And one of the other things that we're advocating is that Mr. Samant does not neglect the domestic growth. He is excellent at the marketing activities. He has done wonders for developing the Indian market, and in very much a Robert Mondavi style, and that should not change. That should continue. That is why it becomes even more critically important to be able to have a management base which will support him in order for him to be able to have time to do these activities. In the long term, we are going to recommend that you continue the domestic growth, and it is time now to consider focusing on exports. There are opportunities in the UK and the US and other countries, especially those with Indian populations. The key thing about this is obviously capacity, and one of the reasons we don't advocate that you look at this in the short term is because your capacity barely meets the domestic market. Our plan will provide you the capacity so that you can consider exports at this time. Once again, the timeline for our plan in the short term, it's about pursuing financing. In the midterm, it's all about the management of the expansion and making sure that this is done properly and preparing the company for this expansion and focusing on the local market. In the long term, it's about market share domestically, it's about considering exports, and it's about looking at the market for wine growth both locally and internationally and considering what capacity is needed. And at that point, as per Sebastian's projections, you will be in a very strong financial position to consider a very successful public offering. A couple of contingencies that we wanted to discuss are grape issues, and particularly the climate in India. This is the boldest strategy of all the three, and therefore any downturn or in production or anything that will affect production will have an impact on these projections. Some considerations are insurance, having a contingency plan with other farmers in order to be able to get emergency growth of grapes. And you are also one of the main winemakers in India. It is time to consider and looking into if there's any sort of government support in the form of agricultural grants that could be that could play a factor in this situation. One thing to not forget is the culture of bribery, and in this case, funds have to be earmarked to get things moving along in any sort of any bureaucracy that's needed. Oh, and also, if there are any family contacts, these have no doubt been leveraged. They should continue to be leveraged. So let's look at the key issues that we have addressed with our recommendation. In regards to the competition, this allows you to maintain your market share and keep up with the growth of the industry. Our plan, in terms of growth on the demand of the company, allows you to become India's premier winemaker by focusing on keeping up with the growing industry. In terms of capacity, our plan addresses your capacity issues and makes sure that you're able to keep on producing at the rate so that you don't lose market share. And the deal structure of the new financing shows clearly that you can grow with internal cash flow, and it also it shows clearly that our scenario is the one which will provide you with the cost structure and the cash flow that will allow this to happen. Thank you very much for your attention today, ladies and gentlemen. We're pleased to welcome any questions you may have.
Bon après-midi. Une stratégie d'expansion, là, à moins que vous l'avez présenté et je l'ai manqué, j'ai rien vu sur qu'est-ce que ça va faire sur notre structure organisationnelle, le niveau de management qu'on aura besoin, les coûts attachés à ça, etc., etc. Est-ce que je peux juste vous entendre sur peut-être les discussions que vous avez eues, s'il vous plaît?
Oui. Je sais pas si mon micro fonctionne. Oui, OK.
Automatique.
OK.